In the heart of the dazzling city, the billionaire sheikh, Amir al-Mazrui, known for his iron will and untouchable status, entered the Gala not with a diplomat or a debutante, but with the modest Nanny who had quietly become the pulse of his guarded world. The grand hall sparkled under the glow of thousands of crystal chandeliers, their light fracturing against the polished marble floors and gilded ornaments. The scent of rare oud and jasmine perfumed the heavy air, mingling with the subtle rustle of silk gowns and murmurs of priceless jewels. Eyes turned instantly, whispers rippled like wind through dry desert sands, secrets poised to ignite the night. Beside the billionaire sheikh, Layla moved with an unassuming grace. Her simple black dress was worlds apart from the extravagant finery cloaking the other women. And yet, there was a quiet determination in her deep brown eyes that no expensive fabric could emulate. Her heartbeat thumped wildly beneath her calm exterior as countless gazes locked onto her, some with condescension, others with veiled curiosity. She dared to stand close to Amir, the man whose name commanded kingdoms, whose presence alone shifted the balance of power in any room. Amir's gaze was razor-sharp, scanning the sea of aristocrats with a dominance sharpened by years of command. To the world, he was a fortress of control. Stern facade, cold expressions, untouchable and revered. Yet the fraction of a second, when his eyes softened as they met Layla's, the billionaire sheikh bring Amir Nanny to his most exclusive event? The whispers branded her as unworthy, a shadow invading their glittering world. The divide between their opulent glimmers and her modest charm was a chasm the elite refused to ignore. Yet Amir walked forward with unbroken poise, his hands steady but protective on Layla's back. There was no apology, no retreat. Within the tension, an unspoken bond charged the space between them, one built on quiet defiance, silent understanding, and a mutual challenge to worlds that sought to keep them apart. As they approached the marble stage, the chandelier's cascade caught Layla's breath. The overwhelming spectacle threatened to swallow her resolve. Then, with the room's attention fixated entirely on Amir and his unconventional companion, she stepped forward. A hush fell. In a voice clear and unwavering, Layla spoke, not merely as a stranger at a gala, but with the courage of every woman who dared to break chains. "We are more than the titles they give us," she declared, eyes shining with fierce pride. "And no gold or diamond can measure the worth of one's heart." Gasps scattered like flame in dry grass. Faces paled. Amir's hand tightened instinctively. Yet a new light flared in his eyes, a spark of admiration and a ripple of change. This defiant act shattered the brittle veneer of the evening and echoed through the halls of power, promising upheaval far beyond the glittering walls. The billionaire sheikh's empire and his heart would never be the same. And before the next secret of the sheikh's world unfolds, make sure you're part of our journey. So many paths are yet to be crossed, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Hit like if this billionaire sheikh has already caught your heart. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what shocking twist do you think is coming next? Your passion for these tales keeps us going. Thank you for being here with us. The grand hall buzzed with a restless energy. The skeptical glances and murmured indignations swirled around Amir al-Mazrui and Layla like a desert storm, yet neither flinched. Amir's grip on Layla's back was firm, a silent shield forged from years of commanding both armies and whispered court intrigues. His jaw was set, the iron will everyone knew all too well, undiminished. But behind his deep brown eyes flickered an unspoken question. How far was he willing to gamble on this quiet rebellion by his side? Layla's chest rose and fell in measured breaths, her gaze steady despite the storm. She felt the weight of hundreds of eyes dissecting her every move, assessing her worth, her origins, and her audacity. The gown she wore was plain, but it shimmered under the chandeliers, not because of jewels, but because of the resolve burning in her spirit. This night was no longer about whispered alliances or power plays. It was a declaration. She was no shadow. She was the pulse beneath the empire's cold surface. As they reached the marble dais, around which the city's elite had gathered, like stars clinging to a velvet sky, Amir's companion straightened to face the waves of judgment. The sharp intake of breath that met her words was one Amir savored quietly, not for the sting it carried toward the guests, but for the fracture it carved in the invisible walls between them. We are more than the titles they give us. Layla's voice echoed through the room. Like an unrelenting tide, no gold or diamond can measure the worth of one's heart. For a heartbeat, silence folded over the crowd, heavy and thick as desert dusk. Then, as if a spark had ignited dry grass, whispers erupted anew, darker and more charged. Noble ladies stiffened, their jeweled fans trembling. Men shifted uneasily, as if the ground beneath their polished shoes had cracked. Amir noticed it all, the way the palace seemed to pulse with tension, with fear of a fracture unseen, but now undeniably present. His eyes flickered to Layla, seeing not the simple nanny they all assumed her to be, but a fire entwined with defiant courage. That slim figure was his unexpected rebellion against expectations, and his solace against loneliness. The gala, meant to be a celebration of power and tradition, had become a battlefield of unspoken challenges. Whispers circled about alliances, threatened, unspoken bets wagered on the young woman who dared to speak truths that unsettled kingdoms. From the periphery, a harsh voice sliced through the murmurs. She dares to speak so boldly because she is under his protection. Without it, she would be nothing. A man stepped forward, a distant cousin of the royal family, whose enmity toward Amir had always simmered beneath polite smiles. His eyes glinted with contempt as he stared at Layla. Using her as a weapon against the Sheikh's reputation, Amir turned slowly. The crowd sensed the storm brewing beneath his still exterior. His voice, when it came, was a low rumble that silenced the whispers in an instant. Layla is valued not by titles or lineage, but by the loyalty and truth she carries. You would do well to remember that, lest you forget the consequences of underestimating those who stand. Beside me, the cousin's face twitched, a mix of shock and suppressed fury. As Amir's words sent ripples through the assembly, Layla's heart throbbed fiercely. The weight of the moment pressed heavy, yet beneath it, a shiver of exhilaration slid through her veins. This was no longer simply about survival. It was a claim to dignity, a refusal to be erased. After a tense pause, a slender woman dressed in emerald green stepped forward, her eyes narrowing with cold calculation. She was a rival known for her subtle machinations, a duchess whose family had long sought to weaken Amir's hold on the city. "Is it loyalty or something else, Sheikh?" she asked, voice dripping with insinuation. "Does affection truly have a place where thrones are built on blood and power?" Amir's gaze sharpened, a storm cloud gathering. Affection shapes empires more than any sword or decree. It is a bond that no treaty can replace, no crown can counterfeit. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Layla stood tall, the light of countless lamps, painting her face in hues of gold and shadow. She could feel the tension coil between her and Amir, a fragile thread of trust now stretched taut. When they finally stepped away from the dais, whispers resumed, some awed by Layla's courage, others furious at the breach in solemn tradition. Amir's hand found hers again, the steady pulse beneath his palm, anchoring her spirit. Yet even within that sanctuary, doubt whispered in the corners of his mind. How much could he risk? How many walls must die to rebuild a world where Layla was not merely a shadow at his side, but a flame that lit the night? Later, in the quiet sanctum of his private study, the weight of court. Politics were nothing compared to the tempest within Amir's heart. The ornate velvet curtains closed away the noise of the gala. He paced, the coolness of the marble floor beneath his feet, failing to still the fire of uncertainty. He thought of Layla, the softness that belied her strength, the courage that had defied his careful control. To the world, she was an anomaly, a risk. To him, she was the unraveling of every guarded truth he had ever clung to. A knock echoed softly. Layla entered, bearing a tray of mint tea. Her eyes, though tired, held an unyielding light. She set the tray gently, her fingers brushing his in a fleeting contact that spoke volumes. "Tonight changed everything," she said quietly, her voice a blend of weariness and resolve. "The world saw us, Amir, not as they wished, but as we are." He nodded, swallowing the bitterness of stakes raised beyond measure. "And now they will fight harder." She lifted her chin, facing the coming storm with the same fierce pride that had shattered the gala's brittle calm. "We will meet them on our terms," she promised, "because what we have is stronger than any of them." Amir allowed himself a rare smile, a fissure in the fortress of his demeanor. The path ahead was shadowed and uncertain, but for the first time in years, he did not feel alone. Outside, the city's heartbeat quickened beneath a blanket of stars, unaware that the delicate balance of its future was now held by two unlikely souls daring to rewrite its destiny. A soft chime interrupted their moment. Amir's gaze snapped to the ornate silver box on the table, a message sealed with the insignia of a rival emirate. The seal was broken already. His eyes darkened as he broke the paper's fold, the words within promising fury and the return of secrets long buried. Layla watched as the color drained from his face the Emperor's calm fracturing. "The world we thought controlled," Amir murmured, voice thick with warning, "has just become far more dangerous." The night was far from over, and beneath its glittering surface, shadows stirred with lethal intent. Amir's eyes darkened as he unfolded the letter, his fingers trembling ever so slightly, an unfamiliar tremor for a man accustomed to control over every element of his world. The ink on the parchment bled threats, promises of vengeance, and shadows from a past he had long buried beneath layers of power and opulence. Layla leaned closer, the scent of mint from the tea mingling with the tension thick in the air. Her glance searched his face, searching for the man behind the Sheikh's unbreakable mask, the man vulnerable to the storm about to descend. "You've been silent too long," she whispered, her voice barely above the rustle of silk against marble. "Whatever this is, it's not just politics, it's personal." Amir's jaw clenched. The ballroom fury had been a mere ripple compared to the tempest this message heralded. He had thought the world safe within the sturdy walls of his palace, the glitter of wealth shielding him from old wounds. But this was a knife slipping inside a familiar wound. "The Al-Rashid Emirate," he muttered, the name of venomous reminder. Old enemies with newer ambitions. His voice was steady, but beneath lay the storm of memories, betrayal, blood promises, and a wound that had never truly healed. Layla's fingers brushed his hand. "We face them together." He turned to her, the faintest flicker of warmth breaking through the ice. She had stepped into his life like a desert wind, relentless, shifting dunes that once seemed eternal and still. Now, that wind was a promise, a defiance. The night outside the thick velvet curtains was alive with secrets. Each window framed the city's glowing pulse, yet beneath its glitter lurked whispers of rebellion and plots that threatened to crumble the fragile peace Amir had fought so fiercely to build. His mind raced back to the Gala, the judging stares, the betrayal etched in polite smiles, the subtle cuts hidden beneath silken words. The powerful families who saw Layla as nothing more than a pawn, an insult, a mockery of their grandeur. And yet in that glare, he had seen a different truth. Not weakness, not submission, but strength cloaked in humility. Strength that refused to bend. The dignity beneath. Her modest dress had shaken the very foundations of that night. The defiance in her words stayed with him, echoing louder than any decree. A soft knock interrupted their charged silence. A young messenger entered, his face pale but his steps sure. "Your Highness, urgent news from the eastern borders." Amir's eyes narrowed. News from the edges of his domain was seldom good news. He rose, the weight of expectation pressing on his shoulders. Layla mirrored his movement, her gaze fierce and unwavering. Outside the study's heavy doors, the palace whispered secrets, intrigues woven like delicate silk threads in a tapestry of power and desire. Amir's voice was low, steady, but carried the weight of command. "Tell me everything." The messenger's report was grim. Unrest had flared among tribal factions, allied with the rival emirate. Skirmishes, hostage threats, and the unmistakable scent of an insidious plan taking root. "We are on the brink of war," Amir declared, pacing again, the marble beneath his feet reflecting the flickering candlelight like shards of a shattered crown. Layla watched him, the flicker of anxiety masked behind poised calm. Her hand brushed over the ornate table, steadying herself. "They underestimate us." "A grave mistake," Amir admitted. His eyes met hers, a spark igniting. "Because while the cities tremble, our strength has always been in unity." Their gazes locked, a silent vow. The empire was more than stone and gold. It was the bond between them. In that moment, the facade of the unyielding sheikh melted away. Amir was not just a ruler. He was a man haunted by the ghosts of his past, fighting to protect the fragile hope in a woman whose courage dared to rewrite the rules. He remembered the whispered insult from the rival noble at the Gala, the venom in her challenge. Does affection truly have a place where thrones are built on blood and power? He would show them the answer. But fate's game was merciless. A faint creak echoed from the hallway. The study's heavy door, a barrier to secrets, was pushed open slightly. A figure stepped inside, cloaked in shadows, footsteps silent yet heavy with intent. Amir's hand moved instinctively to the dagger hidden beneath his robe, a symbol of his readiness, a remnant of battles fought in silence. Layla held her breath, standing close, yet steady, her eyes never abandoning the intruder. The figure removed the hood, revealing a face Amir had hoped never to see again. Cold, calculating, and drenched in the same enigma that had once fractured his world, Salim al-Rashid, a years-long enemy, returned not with armies, but with secrets. "Sheikh Amir," Salim's voice, was a venomous whisper. "The past is not buried. It's alive, and it demands its due." Amir's grip tightened, the weight of every decision pressing down. The shadows that lurked beyond the lights of this gilded city were no longer distant threats. They were at the doorstep. Layla stepped forward, defiance blazing in her eyes. "You've chosen a dangerous game, Salim." The tension stretched taut between the three, the fragile peace shattered into shards. Amir's gaze flickered to Layla, a silent promise that no matter the storm, they would face it as one. But in the air hung the cold certainty that their world was about to change in ways no gold or power could prevent. Salim's grin was a blade in the dark. Tonight is only the beginning. Outside, the city held its breath, unaware that the dance of power, love, and betrayal had entered its ending. Deadliest act. The heavy silence that followed Salim's words was broken only by the steady beat of Amir's heart, loud and insistent in the dimly lit study. Outside, the mansion's grand halls gleamed with chandeliers and whispered secrets. But here, away from the gaze of courtiers and spies, the true war was beginning. Amir's deep brown eyes locked onto Salim, the cold fire within, refusing to flicker with doubt. "You should not have come," he said, voice low, but carrying the weight of an empire. Salim's smirk was a razor edge wrapped in silk. "And yet, here I stand, to remind you, no throne is safe while ghosts walk freely in the shadows." Layla stepped closer, the light from the flickering candles tracing the determined lines of her face. "You threaten what matters most to us both. You forget that love is the fiercest shield. Salim's eyes narrowed, sizing the woman who dared stand in defiance. Love is a luxury for those with nothing left to fight for. Amir's jaw clenched. The old wounds the man carried ran through his veins, threatening to consume them all. He turned toward Layla, her steady presence grounding him, even as the world seemed unstable beneath his feet. This is the beginning of a storm we cannot ignore. Outside, the grand palace seemed to hold its breath, its marble pillars and gilded mirrors silent witnesses to the shifting tides of power. Later that night, in the sanctuary of Amir's private quarters, the tension simmered beneath the surface. Layla poured 2 cups of fragrant mint tea, their steam curling upward like whispered promises. The room smelled of polished wood and a hint of musk, the perfect contrast to the cool desert night beyond the windows. Amir sank into the plush armchair, fingers absently tracing the rim of his cup. His gaze was distant, haunted by memories as fragile and sharp as glass. "I never wanted this war," he confessed, quietly, voice cracked with the weight of burden. "But some enemies do not respect peace." Layla crouched beside him, her eyes soft but fierce. "Peace is built with courage, Amir, and you've never been one to back down." Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining in a delicate dance of trust. For a moment, the trials of empires and blood feuds fell away, leaving only 2 souls clinging to the solid ground of each other. The echo of the night's earlier betrayal still haunted the edges of Amir's mind. Salim al-Rashid was no mere rival. He was a living wound, a relentless shadow from a past Amir had fought to bury. But beneath the veneer of tensions and enemy threats, another fear gnawed at Amir, a fear Layla sensed in the flicker of his eyes when he thought no one watched. "Amir," she murmured, "what is it you fear most?" He exhaled slowly, a ghost of a smile breaking through. "That the world I've built will crumble before I can protect those I love." Layla's gaze hardened with resolve. "Then let us build something new, together, a world where no secret shadow can tear us apart." The moonlight spilled softly through the open balcony doors, casting silver ribbons over their entwined hands. Outside, the desert wind whispered against the walls, ancient and unforgiving. As dawn approached, a flicker of movement disturbed the quiet night. A figure slipped silently through the corridors, moving with purpose and secrecy. Cloaked in midnight hues, the shadow made its way toward the heart of the palace where Amir and Layla had sought refuge from the storm. In the Grand Council chamber, trusted advisors waited anxiously, their voices hushed but charged with urgency. Yet none felt the chill that slithered down the spine of the empire like a serpent. The intruder's steps halted before the heavy doors, a slender hand tracing the elaborate carvings. The door opened with a sound barely heard, and the figure crossed the threshold. A messenger, breathless yet composed, slipped an encrypted scroll into the hands of the Sheikh's most loyal confidant. Amir's eyes scanned the seal, brow furrowing as the insignia glowed faintly in the twilight. An emblem he hadn't seen in years, yet one that spelled ruin. Breaking the wax, a folded letter revealed its cruel script. Words sharp as blades spoke of betrayal within his own council. A traitor embedded deep, ready to fracture his reign from within. The weight of the revelation crashed upon Amir's shoulders. His gaze found Layla's, the storm in his eyes, reflecting the tempest crashing in her soul. "This war," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "is not only fought on battlefields, it is waged in the hearts we trust." Layla nodded, her heart pounding with both dread and fierce resolve. "We face enemies without and within, but our bond, our truth, will be our strongest armor." A sudden knock echoed from the chamber's door. The air thickened, the pulse of danger quickening. Amir moved to open, hand resting on the hilt of his ceremonial dagger, not yet drawn, but a silent promise of defense. The door swung wide, revealing a figure cloaked not in darkness, but in the familiar silhouette of an old ally, whose eyes darted with warning. "The council is fractured," the advisor whispered urgently, "and the traitor's next move will bring ruin at dawn." Amir's gaze hardened. His world was shifting beneath him, alliances crumbling like sandcastles against the desert tide. Yet amid the looming shadows, Layla's touch on his arm was steadfast, a heartbeat of light in encroaching darkness. He swallowed hard, the iron will rekindling. "Then we prepare, because if they believe we will fall, they have yet to meet the true strength of the Billionaire Sheikh and the woman who stands beside him." Beyond the palace walls, the city's glittering facade masked a brewing tempest, one destined to reshape the balance of power forever. And deep within Amir's chamber, amid whispers of betrayal and the promise of war, a secret pulse quickened, a discovery long buried, waiting to surface and shatter everything they thought they knew. As the first rays of dawn bled into the horizon, a silent message arrived, carried by a swift falcon, its talons gripping a small sealed locket engraved with an emblem only Amir recognized. His fingers closed around the cold metal, heart stuttering with the recognition of what they had found. A past long hidden was about to unravel, and with it, the fragile hope for peace would face its greatest test yet. The silver locket lay heavy in Amir's palm, the cold metal seeming to pulse with ominous secrets. Its intricate engraving reflected the faint candlelight, but beneath its beauty was a promise of revelations long buried, waiting to unravel the fragile threads holding his world together. Layla's eyes searched his face, catching the storm that churned silently behind his usually impenetrable gaze. "What is it?" she asked, voice barely above the whisper that seemed to fill the spacious chamber. The scent of musk and rare. Shocking, with anticipation. Amir exhaled slowly, the tension in his muscles unwinding just enough to betray the torrent inside. "A relic from my past," he admitted, "one I hoped would never resurface. This locket, it belonged to my mother." The word hung in the air, like a fragile bloom, on the brink of wilting. Memories flickered behind Amir's, scenes flooded with warmth and pain. His mother, a woman of fierce grace, had died under circumstances wrapped in shadow and silence. The locket was the only tangible link to her, a secret he had guarded fiercely. "But why now?" Layla pressed gently. moving closer, her hand brushing his. A current of electricity surged through the contact, grounding him, steadying the shards of fear, splintering his thoughts. Before Amir could answer, the soft chime of the ornate door echoed again, sharper and more urgent this time. They both turned toward the sound, senses heightened. A slender figure glided into the room, draped in midnight silk that whispered against the polished marble floor. Her eyes shone with cold intelligence and unmistakable resolve. Amir's trusted confidant, and the keeper of many of the empire's darkest secrets. "My sheikh," Amira said, voice low but commanding. "There is word from the northern border. The tribal alliance is fracturing faster than anticipated. And there is news of a recent disappearance. The handler of the intelligence network has vanished without a trace." Amir's brow tightened, his fingers tightening around the locket within his palm. The palace, with its glittering facade, was crumbling quietly beneath the weight of unseen wars. Layla stepped forward, her silhouette framed by the looming shadows cast from the opulent velvet curtains. "We cannot let fear dictate our moves," she said firmly, eyes blazing with defiant light. "We have survived threats before. We will survive this." "But this is unlike any threat we have faced," Amira warned, stepping closer to the heavy oak desk cluttered with maps and encrypted messages. "There are whispers that Salim al-Rashid has resurfaced, moving in the shadows with allies we have never seen. His reach is expanding." The name ignited a pain deeper than any wound Amir bore. The ghost from a fractured past returning to haunt his every step. "I knew this day would come," Amir murmured, voice strained. "To face a past I could never outrun." The room fell into a heavy silence. And then, suddenly, the faint scent of burning incense seeped beneath the door. Amir's eyes caught the flicker of a shadow, moving swiftly past the hall's dim light. Without warning, the heavy doors burst open and an elder emissary entered, his face etched with exhaustion and dread. "Your Highness," he began, his voice fragile but urgent. "A message arrived moments ago. It was slipped through the city gates by a courier from an unknown faction. The letter speaks of a betrayal within your council, a plan in motion to topple your reign before the dawn." Amir's fists clenched tightly. The betrayal he had feared was no longer a distant threat. It was a blade pressed against his very heart. Layla reached for his hand, her grip unwavering. Who would dare betray the billionaire sheikh from within? The emissary's eyes flicked toward the marble windows, the city's glittering lights beyond masking the unrest growing in the shadows. "It seems the enemies are not just outside the palace walls, but also walking among your trusted." Amir's jaw tightened, the weight of power and protection compressing his chest. "Bring forth the council immediately. We must confront this divided loyalty before it fractures us further." As the emissary hurried away, Layla turned to Amir with fierce resolve. "You're not alone in this fight." Her words echoed in the cavernous room, a fragile island of hope inside the gathering storm. Amir stepped toward the window, the city's nightscape sprawling endlessly under thousands of stars. The empire he ruled was vast, but now every glittering jewel in that expanse felt like a precarious piece in a deadly game. Soft footsteps approached. Amira returned, breaking the tense silence. "There is something else, Sheikh. Something you must see." She handed him a small, intricately carved box, sealed with the emblem of a forgotten clan long thought extinct. Opening it, Amir's eyes darkened as he stared at the contents. A collection of faded documents, old enough to be fragile, but inside them lay plans, ancient treaties, maps, and cryptic messages hinting at alliances and betrayals far older than even Salim's vendetta. "It seems," Amira said quietly, "you are not only fighting a war of today, but one with roots that run deeper than the sands of time." A chill swept through the room as Amir absorbed the weight of this revelation. His past, the whispers of family betrayals, secret pacts, and frozen rivalries were unraveling beneath his very feet. Layla moved closer, her hand resting gently against his chest, feeling the steady pulse of life beneath the embroidered silk of his robe. "Then we face it, together," she pledged softly. "No ghost, no secret, no enemy, present or past, can break what we have." His eyes flickered with something almost lost in the years of solitude, a fragile hope rekindling like a desert dawn. Suddenly, the flicker of torchlight illuminated the grand hall beyond the study doors. Voices rose in hushed but urgent murmurings. The palace was awakening to the storm Amir had always known was coming. Then, the heavy doors creaked open once more, revealing a figure, cloaked in shadow, face concealed. Amir's hand hovered near the dagger hidden beneath his garment, muscles coiled and ready for the inevitable confrontation. But it was Layla who stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tense quietude. "The past may come hunting," she said, eyes blazing in the dim light, "but it won't find us without a fight." The shadow moved, and as the face emerged from the darkness, a name slipped through the charged air like a knife. Khalil. Amir's breath caught. The storm was no longer coming. It had already arrived. The heavy scent of burning incense lingered in the air, weaving through the shadows in Amir's private study. The faint flicker of candlelight cast elongated shapes across the polished marble floor, mirroring the turmoil that churned quietly within the walls of the palace. Amir stood motionless by the towering window, gazing out at the city's glittering sprawl, a kingdom bathed in lights, but shadowed by threats unseen. The silver locket nestled in his palm felt impossibly heavy. Its cold surface, a stark reminder of a past long buried, but never forgotten. His knuckles whitened as fingers clenched around it, the fragile hope that Layla had sparked, battling the unease seeping from every secret letter, every whispered threat. Behind him, the soft shuffle of footsteps pulled him from his reverie. Layla entered quietly, her silhouette framed by the heavy velvet drapes. Her eyes, still gleaming with the fierce defiance shone at the Gala, softened as they met his. "Amir," she said, her voice like a steady flame in the darkness. "Your past is calling, but it doesn't define what lies ahead. We face it together." Her words brushed against the tension in his chest, but the weight of the night pressed down harder. The locket bore a secret, and beneath its engravings lay a key, one that could unravel everything Amir had fought to protect. before he could voice his fears, the door creaked open once again. Amira stepped inside, her expression taut with urgency. In her hands, she clutched a folded parchment stained with the desert dust of distant borders. "There's more," she announced softly. "The tribal alliances are fracturing. Rumors speak of alliances formed behind your back, and loyalists who may no longer be what they seem." Amir's dark eyes sharpened. The city's gleam now seemed fragile, a fragile veneer over a crumbling empire. He exchanged a glance with Layla, a silent pact forming between them. "We cannot afford hesitation," Amir said. His voice, low and authoritative, filled the vast space. "Prepare the council. We need to uncover truth before betrayal becomes battle." Layla stepped closer, her hand finding his. The touch was brief, but it anchored him against the rising tide of uncertainty. Yet beneath the composed exterior, both felt the tremor of doubt, the unspoken question of who could truly be trusted. Later that night, in the dim glow of the study's lanterns, Amir spread the faded documents from the carved box across the great oak table. Ancient treaties, cryptic codes, and brittle present. The room hummed with a tense stillness. Amir's gaze traced the jagged lines of an old border, where whispers of war had simmered for decades. The realization was bitter. The battle he faced was not only for land or power, it was for the very survival of his family legacy. Layla knelt beside him, her voice a quiet, resolute murmur. "Every empire has cracks. What matters is who holds the pieces." Amir's jaw tightened. "And who would shatter them for gain?" His eyes flicked to her, gratitude and something shyly hopeful sparking in their depths. She was more than an ally. She was the fierce heartbeat daring to defy the darkness closing in. Suddenly, the sharp ring of a distant bell tore through the night, shattering the fragile calm. Amir's hand instinctively moved to the dagger hidden beneath his robe, a gesture more of habit than intent. But the warning was clear. Enemies stirred, and time slipped through their grasp like quicksilver. The palace gates echoed with hurried footsteps, voices low but tense. A messenger burst through the chamber doors, breathless but composed. "Your Highness," the young man gasped. "Urgent news from the city's heart. A trusted advisor has been found conspiring with the rival clans. Plans of betrayal set to ignite at dawn." The room seemed to constrict. Even the flickering candle flames steadied as the weight of treachery settled like a stone on Amir's chest. Layla's gaze hardened, a silent fire blazing in the quiet corners of their sanctuary. "It is closer than we thought." Amir's voice was a growl wrapped in silk. "So, the enemy is not only outside our walls, but behind every mask we greet under the palace's chandeliers." He rose, the calculated weight of a leader, reclaimed. Every step toward the council chamber was a hammer striking the anvil of his resolve. Later, as the moon cast silver scars across the desert dunes, Amir found himself alone on the balcony, the cool night air brushing against his skin. The locket dangled from his fingers, now opened, revealing a worn portrait, his mother's eyes, filled with pride and pain. His thoughts spiraled back to the promise he had whispered in solitude, to protect what was left, to build anew with Layla. A sudden movement in the courtyard below drew his gaze. Figures, cloaked in shadow, slipped between the palms and pillars, silent as ghosts, but deadly as vipers. His pulse quickened. The storm did not wait. From the halls behind, Layla emerged, her eyes meeting his with unwavering strength. No words were needed. Their hands met, fingers intertwining, a silent oath. In that suspended moment, the city's beautiful facade masked a truth far harsher. The trail was a blade honed close, and the days to come would test their love and loyalty beyond anything they had faced. A whisper of silk, a flicker of shadow, and then a voice, chilling and cruel, broke through the darkness. Khalil has returned. Amir's breath caught, the air thickening with cold dread. The nightmare they thought buried was now standing before them. The past had come to claim its due, and the world they knew was about to be forever broken. The name Khalil echoed in Amir's mind, like the toll of a distant bell, cold and ominous. His heart, already weighed down by secrets and betrayals, clenched as the reality of the threat settled. A shadow from a past believed vanquished, now standing at his doorstep. Layla's hand tightened around his, a lifeline amidst the tempest. Her gaze held a fierce spark, refusing to yield, even as fear whispered in the depths of their souls. "Khalil," she repeated, the word tasting bitter, yet real. "What does he want now?" Amir did not answer immediately. Instead, his eyes scanned the vast chamber, shadows shifting as the flickering candlelight struggled against the night's darkness. The palace, so grand and imposing, suddenly felt fragile, as if the walls themselves whispered of threats unseen and battles yet to come. A cold wind swept through the open balcony doors, carrying with it the faintest scent of scorched earth and distant fires, stirring the heavy silk curtains like ghostly fingers. Amir stepped toward the window, the silver locket still clutched tightly in his palm. Its cold weight was a tether to memories too painful to revisit, yet impossible to abandon. He turned to Layla. "Khalil is not just a name. He is the reckoning I have dreaded all these years. Every step we have taken forward has been shadowed by him." His voice was low, laced with a weariness that betrayed the relentless burden of 40 winters under desert suns and palace intrigues. Layla's gaze softened, but did not waver. "Then we face him, together." The air between them pulsed with unspoken promises and the fragile thread of hope that had bloomed amid stones of hardship and whispered betrayals. Suddenly, a velvet-clad figure crossed the threshold, a courier, breathless yet composed, carrying a sealed scroll marked with the insignia of Khalil's faction. Amir caught the gesture instinctively, the weight of duty pulling him taut once more. Breaking the seal with measured fingers, his eyes devoured the script swiftly. Each word stabbed deeper, a declaration of war wrapped in cryptic threats. The past must be reckoned with. "Amir al-Mazrui," the message warned. "Your empire trembles on deceit, and your heart will be the battlefield where loyalty and treachery collide." The candlelight flickered wildly, casting wild shadows across Amir's sharp features. A storm raged just beneath the surface of his typically composed exterior. Layla stepped forward, voice steady, though her heart thundered like desert storms. "The night is dark, but your strength is not alone, Amir. We have the power to turn the tide." He seems to hesitate, the fight within building an unyielding wall of resolve. The stakes are higher than ever. Khalil has allies, hidden, patient, and ruthless. Outside, the city's glittering skyline was oblivious to the gathering storm. Its palaces and gardens, fountains and lantern-lit paths hid a world tightening like a noose. Amir's gaze fell to the ornate dagger at his side, a symbol of his heritage and his willingness to defend all he holds dear. This will be a war not merely of swords and schemes, but of hearts and minds. His voice was a vow, the steel beneath the silk. Layla reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his brow, a touch tender yet fierce. "Then let our hearts be the fortress they cannot breach." The hours slipped away in quiet preparation. In the solitude of Amir's study, piles of maps and letters lay scattered, illuminated only by the soft glow of lanterns. Tokens from 1,000 battles, past and present, reminded them of the stakes. Amir's voice broke the silence, low and solemn. "If Khalil believes he can wake ghosts to destroy me, he underestimates the bonds forged in fire and love." His eyes met Layla's, the depths of his weathered soul shining faintly. "We have no choice but to stand stronger than ever." The night deepened, a velvet shroud pierced by distant echoes of unseen footsteps, secret meetings, and whispered plots. Suddenly, the heavy doors to the study swung open. Amira entered, her face grim, her eyes reflecting the flicker of lamplight and unease. "There is news," she said, placing a sealed pouch on the table. "A courier intercepted. Khalil's forces are moving faster than expected. Their reach may now extend into the very heart of the city." Amir's jaw clenched, resolve hardening. "We must act with both speed and subtlety, to protect what is ours, and to protect those we love." Layla caught his gaze, unwavering. No secret weapon or alliance is stronger than conviction. Amir nodded. "Tonight, the palace that held our dignity will become the front line of a war unforeseen. But with you by my side, Layla, I know the night can never silence the dawn." A sudden rap at the door broke the charged silence. Amir's hand on his dagger was swift but measured. The door opened, revealing a young messenger, face pale and eyes wild. "Your Highness, urgent news. A trusted advisor has vanished. Only his cloak remains, lying abandoned in the palace gardens. No sign of struggle, but the timing is no coincidence." Layla took a slow, steady breath. "The enemy moves unseen in shadows we trusted." Amir's gaze flickered, a haunted memory rising behind his eyes. The greatest threats are woven from betrayal closest to the heart. He turned back toward the window, the city's distant lights shimmering like fragile stars on the edge of the abyss. "Khalil's return is no mere challenge," Amir whispered. "It is the reckoning of all I am, past and present entwined." Layla stepped beside him, her silhouette barely visible against the night sky. Her fingers brushed against his, a quiet anchor in a swirling tempest. Outside, unseen eyes watched the palace towers, waiting for the moment to strike. And in the deepest shadow of the night, a whisper lingered, soft and chilling. "The game has only just begun." The whisper of Khalil's name still hung heavy in the air, a shadow cast long and dark across the quiet sanctuary of Amir's study. The glow of the lanterns flickered against the polished marble, casting wavering patterns that seemed to echo the turmoil brewing deep within the walls. Amir stood near the towering window, the silver locket cool and weighty in his palm. His gaze swept across the city, a tapestry of shimmering lights and silent dangers. Every gleam seemed to hide a secret, every shadow a lurking threat. Layla approached slowly, her presence a balm to his restless storm. Her eyes, fierce and unwavering, met his with the unspoken promise forged in trials past. "He's come back," she said softly, "not as rumor, but as reality." "What are we going to do now?" Amir's voice was low, thick with the burden of years and battles unseen. "Khalil is more than an enemy. He is the reckoning of everything I tried to bury. The past rising to drown the future." His knuckles whitened around the locket's delicate chain. A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the distant echo of the city's restless heartbeat. The scent of oud and amber smoke hung in the air, mixing with the cold desert night that pressed against the palace's stained glass. Suddenly, the room's stillness fractured. Footsteps approached, soft at first, then deliberate. The door creaked open, and Amira stepped inside, her sharp eyes alert beneath the heavy veil of midnight silk. "There's been movement in the north," she reported, her tone grim. "Reports of mercenary forces gathering, linked to Khalil's network. But there's something else." She hesitated, flicking a glance toward Amir. "An informant close to us has gone dark. Silence is a warning in this game." Amir's jaw clenched, the weight of unseen treachery settling like stone in his chest. "We've been blind to the cracks beneath our own roof," he muttered. "We must uncover every shadow that moves against us." Layla stepped forward, determination flaring in her gaze. "Then we act, before the serpent strikes where we least expect." The three of them gathered around the heavy oak table, scattered with maps and fragile documents, ghosts of alliances past and present. Amir traced a faded border with a trembling finger, the lines on the map, mirroring the fractures spreading through his realm. "Khalil's reach is long," Amir said gravely. "He's no stranger to betrayal. If he has allies grafted deep inside our walls, we must root them out quickly." His voice sharpened with resolve. "Before he unravels all I've built." Layla touched his hand gently, the heat of her skin steadying the tempest in his eyes. "We're stronger than they imagine. United, we can withstand what comes." Amir's gaze softened, but the fire in his eyes burned fiercer than ever. "Then we prepare. The coming days will test more than swords. They will test the truest strength of our hearts." A sudden sharp knock at the door broke the intensity of the moment. A young messenger, pale and urgent, entered with a breathless step. "Your Highness, the palace gardens." His voice faltered. A cloak was found, abandoned, no sign of struggle. He met Amir's steady stare. "But the timing is suspicious." Amir's hand tightened around the locket. "The enemy moves with shadows, close to home." Layla swallowed the shadow of fear rising in her chest, replacing it with fierce resolve. "They think silence will smother us, but we will roar louder." As the messenger hurried away, Amir stepped back to the window, watching the city's glittering skyline. a silent witness to the silent wars waging in its veins. The opulence of the palatial realm belied the brittle tension cracking its foundation. His thoughts flickered to the woman beside him, nurturing yet unyielding, the flame in the endless night. The contrast between her gentle grace and fierce spirit was the tether that held him from falling into the abyss. "Khalil's return changes everything," Amir murmured, eyes narrowing. "This is no longer just a fight for land or power. It's a war for our souls." Layla's fingers found his, squeezing in quiet defiance. "Then we guard them fiercely, together." The evening deepened, shadows pooling in corners, secrets crawling beneath silk curtains. The distant clatter of armored boots echoed faintly, a reminder that time was no longer an ally. Amir lifted the locket, opening it to reveal the faded portrait within, his mother's serene face staring back from another time. A reminder of what was at stake, the past and present tangled in a dangerous dance, threatening to pull everything into ruin. A whisper brushed through the chamber, soft footsteps in the hall, then silence. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open. A figure cloaked in sable stepped inside, the silhouette familiar yet chilling. Khalil's eyes gleamed cold beneath his hood, the weight of old wounds and new threats pressing into the room like a storm. Amir's hand rested on the hilt of his dagger. Layla's stance was unwavering, a shield forged from courage and love. Khalil smiled, a slash of shadow and menace. "You cannot outrun the past, Amir. Not when it hunts you in your own halls." The air thickened, tension coiling like a serpent, ready to strike. Amir's voice carried the steel of command. "This time, it's not just my empire you challenge. It's the bond that no weapon can sever." Layla stepped forward, eyes blazing, fearless. "We will face you, and whatever darkness you bring." Khalil laughed, a sound void of warmth. "Then let the reckoning begin." Outside, the city shivered beneath a moon veiled in clouds. Inside, the fragile peace shattered, and the long night of secrets, love, and betrayal gave way to a battle whose echoes would shape the fate of empires. The game had begun anew, and none could say who would stand when dawn finally broke. The heavy silence that had cloaked the palace study all night finally began to lift as dawn's first light streamed through the intricately carved windows, casting warm patterns upon polished marble and ancient scrolls, a quiet herald that the darkest hours were passing. Amir al-Mazrui stood by the window, the silver locket still resting in his palm, its weight now feeling less like a burden and more like a reminder of the strength he carried within. Layla's presence beside him was steady and unwavering, a calm flame after storms of betrayal and shadows. Her hand found his, fingers entwining naturally, grounding him as they both prepared to face whatever lay beyond the palace walls. The night's threats, the returned ghost of Khalil, the whispered plots within the council, the fractured alliances, had tested Amir like no other challenge before, but together they had faced the darkness and had not faltered. The enemy lurking in shadows had been revealed, its power diminished by the unbreakable bond formed between a sheikh and the woman daring to stand at his side. Word had spread swiftly the night before. The traitor within had been uncovered and brought to justice, not through bloodshed, but by Amir's decisive wisdom, exposing deceit with a courage that reminded all that true power lay in truth and loyalty. The city's whispers, once heavy with doubt and scandal, softened into murmurs of awe, even hope. As the grand doors of the council chamber opened, trusted allies entered with renewed respect in their eyes. The fractured house of power had begun to mend, its foundation stronger for the trials endured. Amir turned to Layla, admiration shining more brightly than the jewels adorning the palace halls. "You have been my light through this long night," he said, voice low yet filled with profound gratitude. "Your courage has changed not only me, but the course of this empire's future." Layla smiled, gently. The fierce pride of that unforgettable gala evening softened into quiet joy. "I stood by you because I believed in what we could build together, beyond titles, beyond old grudges. We've proven that love and loyalty are the true currency of power." Outside, the city awakened, bathed in the golden glow of sunrise. The scent of blooming jasmine and rare desert flowers drifted through open windows, heralding renewal and peace. In the palace gardens, newly planted trees whispered promises of growth, and fountains sang songs of calm, symbols that even amidst ruins, life and hope could flourish. Slowly, Amir released the locket from his grasp and closed it tenderly, setting it upon the ornate wooden desk. It was no longer a chain holding him to painful memories, but a cherished relic, marking where his past met a future now forged with purpose and love. Their steps led them into a quiet hall, where courtiers and family members waited, their faces no longer masks of suspicion, but reflections of acceptance and respect. One by one, old grievances were put aside as smiles and genuine embraces replaced cold glances. The Duchess, who once challenged Amir's heart and honor, approached, her voice sincere. "Sheikh Amir, Layla, your union has reminded us all that true strength lies in unity. The city's path is brighter for it." Amir nodded, a calm determination settling in his eyes. "We will lead, not as distant rulers, but as partners, fierce in our convictions, compassionate in our actions. The empire's future belongs to love as much as to legacy." Layla, dressed now in gowns that reflected both her dignity and her modesty, stood tall beside him. Her story from a quiet nanny to the respected partner of a billionaire sheikh had become a beacon of hope, a testament that a heart's worth is beyond gold or diamond. That evening, beneath the vast desert sky studded with stars, Amir and Layla walked hand in hand through the palace terraces. The chill of past uncertainties melted into the warmth of shared promises. "Will there always be battles ahead?" Layla asked softly, her gaze catching the horizon where the city lights met endless sands. Amir smiled, a rare, unguarded expression that held every vow of the journey. "Perhaps, but now, with you beside me, I fear nothing." Their silhouettes melded against the silver glow of moonlight. Two souls, bound not just by circumstance, but by a love proven in fire and shadow. The empire's pulse, once fragile and uncertain, beat strong and true, in rhythm with their hearts. Inside the palace, The flicker of candles grew steadier, the echoes of past betrayals fading into whispers. A new chapter was beginning, a tale not of secrets or loneliness, but of hope, redemption, and the enduring power of chosen family. As the city below stirred to life, the promise of peace shimmered like desert stars reflected in crystal waters, fragile yet eternal. Amir's gaze met Layla's once more, the silent bond between them louder than any proclamation. Together, they would build a future where no shadow could dim the light of their trust. And beneath the vast Arabian sky, two hearts united faced the dawn, stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace all that awaited beyond the horizon.